Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
Welcome, everyone, to the P.A.S. Report podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. I'm glad you could join me today. Make sure you are following and subscribe to the podcast, and also visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com. And don't forget to check out the new America's Founding series, where we focus on the forgotten patriots that don't often get talked about. But I want to jump in with today's guest because I have a great guest coming on. I have Kirk Cameron, actor, author of Born to be Brave, How to be Part of America's Spiritual Comeback, which is certainly needed in this country. And he has a brand new series out, and it's on Brave Plus. Everyone needs to check it out. We're going to have links up at the PAS report. The new series, Iggy and Mr. Kirk Cameron, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Nick. Thanks so much for having me on the show. You know, based on your accent, I'm sure you're from Georgia or South Carolina, right?
Yes. Actually, I was thinking North Dakota, but no, you know exactly where I'm from. Now, Kirk, I have to say, I watched you growing up on Growing Pains, and it was one of the best shows I watched growing up. And it was interesting because every episode there was a moral story to the episode. It reinforced core values, family, faith, personal responsibility. We see programming today where it's gone off the rails. It promotes division. It promotes confusion, violence. The vices take control. You now have this new series coming out. What are you looking to do with it?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. I remember growing up probably around the same time that you did. And when we were watching shows, my parents wanted us to sit down and watch shows like Little House on the Prairie or whatever it was that was not only entertaining, but it told a good story. And it really showed you the value of family and being honest and loving and caring about one another. And on Growing Pains, that's what we tried to do too. We tried to do in a modern way with a modern family, the same types of things that were producing good values and pulling families together. And it seems like now all these shows are mocking families, mocking fatherhood, perverting motherhood. Now they've turned gender upside down and telling men that they can have babies and that girls can be men. So what we're seeing now is a backlash against all of that. I mean, Disney's Snow White just tanked at the box office, and parents are sick and tired of big companies breaking their trust with their kids. I mean, they want their kids learning good values. So that's what we're trying to do with this new show called Iggy and Mr. Kirk. Think of a brand new Mr. Rogers meets Sesame Street. It's for little kids ages 4 to 8, and it's got beautiful animation, live action, and lovable puppets. So kids engage with the rabbit and with Iggy the iguana and Carlos the squirrel and Sydney the rabbit. We've even got a vulture named Culture who's always deceiving Iggy and lying to him. And Culture is the bad guy, but Culture is redeemable. And one day Culture is going to be turned around. And these are the kinds of lessons that we want to teach our kids. Faith, honesty, love your family, do the right thing, tell the truth. Where are those shows anymore? Well, we got the place for parents to go.
And that's why they need to check it out on Brave Plus, because the core values that you're emphasizing are so important for any nation to survive. I mean, let's face it. We've seen the destruction of the nuclear family in the United States. We've seen the attacks on this idea of toxic masculinity and where it's gotten us. But Iggy and Mr. Kirk look to change that. Now, first of all, are you going to be wearing the sweater that Mr. Rogers wore on his show?
I don't have a cardigan sweater, but I got a leather bomber jacket. And we even got our own mailman. Mr. Rogers had Mr. McFeely, speedy delivery. Mailman Dan, who delivers a new Brave book to Iggy and Mr. Kirk to read in the treehouse every evening before they go to sleep. And my wife in the show and my daughter in the show, they get into the storytelling as well. And, at the end of the episode, I look at all of the kids right in the camera and I say, "Good night, brave explorers. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you and give you peace. Good night." and there's this beautiful lullaby that Iggy sings from his little lizard hammock that kids are just going to love, and they're going to want their parents to sing it to them when they go to sleep at night. It's beautiful.
And I have to ask, how important is it for you to have family there to be participating in this project?
When people are watching it, this is actually a co-viewing experience for families, which is almost non-existent nowadays. You know, kids got their shows on their phone, and then mom and dad got their shows on their big TV in the living room, and everybody's separate. Where are the shows, like when we were kids, where you could sit down as a family and watch together? Well, Iggy and Mr. Kirk is one of them, and when you go to Brave Plus, you're going to find more than 50 shows that have all been vetted. They're not overstimulating for your little kids. They're actually healthy for their cognitive development, and it promotes family togetherness where you can talk to your kids about faith, hope, and love, and they will ask you questions, and you can help them apply those virtues to their everyday situations.
Yeah, this is not one of those shows where you just put it on autopilot to distract your kids as you're doing the other things. But you've been someone who isn't afraid to speak up. You're not afraid to speak out. You've been very vocal about the importance of faith and family. And it's interesting because you come from an industry that really doesn't like to talk about faith and family. As a matter of fact, a lot of times we'll attack people of faith and family. So how do you handle that?
You know, I'm probably, I've just lived long enough to know that if your values and what you talk about changes with the wind, you know, if it's like, where's the wind blowing? Oh, everybody wants me to be an atheist? I'll be an atheist. Oh, wait a minute. You want me to go woke, or you want me to be a conservative or a Democrat? I'll go that way so that I can make a buck. If you do that, you're nothing. You're nothing that's going to last. You know, you're a flash in the pan, you're here and you're gone, and good riddance. What I want is to send roots down deep into what is true, what is good, and what is beautiful. And at the end of the day, the pendulum is swinging back away from this craziness, away from this perversion and twistedness of values and family and genders and everything else. That's why Disney is bombing. That's why P.B.S. is on trial right now for wasting hundreds of millions of dollars promoting extreme leftist LGBTQIA. They got so many letters, we don't even know. We can't even list them anymore. But thank God that stuff is going away, and we're swinging back to the values that's not even left or right. I believe it's up instead of down. That's where we were headed, and we're headed back up to the values of heaven, which are tell the truth, be kind, love God, family first. You do those kinds of things, we can get the whole nation healthy again, safe again, good again, and then it's going to be great again.
Yeah, it's important because you brought up Disney, and a lot of people feel betrayed by Disney. I mean, when I was growing up, there weren't
I do.
all these political messages and sneaking things in that went against certain people's values. Disney was about putting on a product that was entertaining for children and families to watch together and bring it. But they've long abandoned that. So this creates an opening for Brave Plus. And when you look at what you're doing and the work you're doing, how do you hope this series helps spark like deeper conversations within our societies and within family units as well?
Yeah. Well, how do I hope that it sparks conversations? Well, I just hope that it does. If you watch the show, your kids are going to love it. The characters are adorable. The storylines are really good. It's very, very high quality. In fact, the guy who did all the music for VeggieTales, if you know what that show is for kids, is, that guy's top shelf. His name's Kurt Heineke, and he does the music for our show. We've got Lee Allen Baker, a former Disney star from Good Luck Charlie. We've got the world's best puppeteer from Jim Henson's The Muppets. I mean, this guy did Kermit the Frog and Elmo, and now he is Iggy the Iguana and Culture the Vulture. So you're going to love the show, and it's safe without a second thought. So if you really want the full experience, just download the app, Brave Plus, on your TV, your smart TV, and you can watch the first 3 episodes for free. Plus 50 other shows that have been vetted by parents. If they're overstimulating, they're out. If they're good and wholesome and they're fun and they produce character in your kids, then they're in. And I hope that it's going to spark a whole new genre of kids television and adult television. And we get back to stuff that leads to the blessing in this country.
Well, you'd think that Hollywood would have woken up to this. It seems that, you know, when you focus on family and faith, those movies actually do well, yet Hollywood continues to ignore them. It's amazing. But instead, they keep on putting out products where vices are celebrated, where it's impossible to distinguish who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. You can't tell the difference between them. And, you know, as someone that is in the industry, what are the consequences of this shift that we saw in Hollywood?
I think the consequences are very good. You know, I love being on your show, Nick, because you say so many things. I want to jump off on that rabbit trail, and I want to go down that rabbit hole over there. But I want to stick to what you're asking me. What are the consequences? I think that they're very, very good. I think we're going to begin to see more and more shows that embrace the values that families are looking for. You know, false systems never work. They may crop up. They seem new. They seem great. Like they're progressive. We're really moving forward into all of this. You know, the purple hair platoon's got all these great ideas for transing our kids and all. And you know what? False systems have no roots. They might grow big because they're artificially propped up and the branches are big and the fruit is heavy, but it's sour. And ultimately, that kind of a tree starts to wobble and it falls over because there's no root going down deep into what's true. And now that parents are recognizing the trees are falling down all around, education's falling apart. Thank God we're dismantling the Department of Education. In my opinion, that's stuff that belongs to families in the states, not run from the top down, but for people in their own communities to decide on what they want to teach their kids. I mean, we spend more on education than any other country in the world, and we're at the bottom of the heap. And we can do so much better, just like everything else. If we take it into our own hands and we govern ourselves and we have family government and community and church government, all of a sudden we're leaning into values that are good for one another, not what's good for the bottom line of the politicians or good for the bottom line of Disney. And our politics will reflect our values because we live in the United States of America. This isn't China. It's not like, you know, Xi Jinping gets to decide what everybody learns and what everybody values in our country. Here, we are a constitutional representative government republic. And so if we do it right and we elect the right people of character and faith, like our founders told us, we can have politics that reflect our values and it leads to blessing, to growth, and prosperity.
Yeah, the last administration tried the Xi Jinping style. It didn't work out too well here in the United States. So.
No, and you know, I mean, listen, we have to be honest too. Is that there's enough people who maybe, you know, they may be red in color, they're voting conservative, but they still want to jam those values from the top down Xi Jinping style. That's not the way it works here. You know, George Washington, they wanted to make him king. And he said no. I mean, he wanted all of this, and Thomas Jefferson wanted all of this to be, for the authority and the power to be into the hands of the people. Now, if the people go bad, we're screwed. If the people go bad and the people are dumb and they don't read and they're not educated, well, then they're going to cry out for a Xi Jinping. They're going to cry out for some great big leader to come in with a big stick and bring order to everything. But if we order ourselves and we're educated and we have character of heart and we love our neighbor as ourselves, man, we're unstoppable. That's what the secret of America's genius and power was.
Yeah, you're talking about something that I often talk about on the show that's largely gets ignored. And
I know you do. That's why I'm preaching to the choir here.
That built the United States, self-reliance, personal responsibility, that there isn't a government solution to every single problem, especially when we get to these cultural issues. Government is the problem most of the time. Right. It certainly is.
And as far as reliance, I agree with the sentiment of what you're saying. I would even try to nuance it even more and say, now, look, I'm not trying to big dog anybody. And you correct me if you think this is naive. But I think at the end of the day, I know I can't keep my heart beating at night. I can't make sure that I keep breathing while I'm asleep. I can't rely on myself. I got to rely on God. If he keeps my heart beating at night, now I can govern myself because I'm reliant on the one who made me and who loves me. And that was the founding values of our country. That's why we are a nation under God. Reagan said, if we forget that, we'll be a nation gone under.
Yeah, well, we have too many that try to push this idea that there is a total separation of church and state, and they don't realize that faith plays a huge role within society and our lives. And yet you have a lot of people that have tried to erase it from our society. And I would argue that things haven't really improved as the pews go empty. Things haven't improved as the nuclear family has been abandoned.
That's exactly right. And that's why I'm so excited. This show, Iggy and Mr. Kirk, for little kids, couldn't be more important. I think it maybe is the most important project that I've ever worked on. You say, well, wait a minute, how can you say that? I mean,
I don't know. I'm impartial to Growing Pains, I got to
yeah,
say.
Growing Pains. Hey, I know Growing Pains, but that was then, right? I mean, our kids are not watching Growing Pains anymore. And if we want a future in the country, we got to give them something now. We got to give them something new. And that's why, as a grandfather, can you believe it? Mike Seaver's a grandfather, Nick.
No, I can't.
I got
actually.
a 6-month-old grandbaby. I know, I
You're
can't
making
believe
me
it.
feel old.
But I want to leave a legacy of the kind of TV shows and talk about and make the stuff that is going to be good for them. It's going to nourish their hearts and minds. I don't want them watching this garbage that, the more data that comes out, they're realizing that overstimulation for children through TV shows that are overstimulating with colors and jump cuts and non-diegetic sounds, that poses just as much of a risk to parents as processed artificial foods. The way that hurts their body and is bad for them, it rots their brain when they're watching even up to 5 minutes of this garbage. And parents are wondering, why do I have to get my kids on Ritalin? Why do they have all these problems? Well, garbage in, garbage out. And that goes not only for the body, it goes for their minds and their hearts too.
Yeah, and if we want a strong country, I mean, we have to promote values that make our society work, values that actually build our society to improve as opposed to going backwards. And, you and I have lived, you look back, times were good. I like the 80s, the 90s.
Hey, the 80s were great, baby.
They were.
Give me a little Prince, a little Duran Duran. We got some great movies back then and some great hairstyles. I was rocking the mullet on Growing Pains.
Well, that's why I have to ask, when you look at Hollywood and the creativity or the lack of creativity that now exists, do you think that there's more of an avenue for you to go down with Iggy and Mr. Kirk than there would have been, let's say, 10 years ago?
I think so, definitely. I mean, the fact that we have smart TVs and we have so many channels on satellite and cable, everybody can get information now. Everybody can get entertainment now. Anybody can make entertainment now. So much competition. Back when we were kids, we had ABC, NBC, and CBS, and that was it. But now we got thousands and thousands of channels. So it's really great. And people can make fantastic things. Look at The Chosen. There's a cultural phenomenon. Nobody thought something like that would work. I remember when the very first episode came out, it was a little short video called The Shepherd. And it was cool, and it was not a big studio production, but it struck a chord in the hearts of people. And now it is a cultural phenomenon. And millions and millions of people are watching this, and every network wishes that they had it. And that was because a guy named Dallas Jenkins put something together. I mean, he was working at his church, and he was talented, and he got a great team of people together, and he did it on a shoestring budget, and then a movement began. And that's the kind of thing that can happen nowadays with somebody with a phone and a laptop computer. You can create really high quality stuff. So that should be encouraging to every mom, every dad, every kid out there, every college student. You can start a revival and a renaissance of great things in our country if you put your heart into it.
Well, I have to ask, because one of the big problems that I see, I mean, listen, I'm in the classroom with young adults, and I have to compete with their attention over their phones, right? And parents have to compete for their kids' attention. A lot of parents, I don't give my kids the phones. I don't like the phones. My older one now, he has one because he's of age and I have to keep track of him. But when you look at the devices that we have, how difficult is it as a grandparent now, apparently, how difficult is it in today's day and age to raise children compared to the way it used to be, 30, 40, 50 years ago?
I think we have new challenges. I'm not sure how much more difficult it is. 30, 40, 50 years ago, I wasn't a parent. So I'm not exactly sure. And kids today growing up, they probably don't think it's difficult for them to grow up either. In fact, I think it's better. They go, hey, I got an iPhone. I got a laptop. I can order DoorDash and get my favorite ice cream delivered to my door. I got Amazon Prime, and I can get anything I want coming in, right, off Temu or something like that. So they
But
think
see,
it's
when
great.
we were growing up, our mistakes stayed with us. They weren't videoed and broadcast live to the rest of the world.
Yeah, yeah. So I think every kid thinks it's great because it's always great being a kid, and every parent thinks that their generation's worse than the one before. So I don't know. I think we've got a lot of blessings and privileges today for sure. I mean, you and I are talking. We couldn't do this back in the 1970s,
That's a
and we
good
can get
point.
good messages out to people. But we've also got this little phone, which is a portal to hell with wickedness and evil that will just sneak into your kids at night while they're in their bed sleeping if you're giving them a phone. So God bless you and way to go having some, having some convictions and principles in how you're raising your kids. And I want to say again that that's exactly what frames the kinds of shows that we put on Brave Plus. Iggy and Mr. Kirk, Bob the Builder, Strawberry Shortcake. I remember watching a show called Davy and Goliath when we were little, and these were great shows. These are the kinds of shows that we want to show our kids today. So we got old ones, we got new ones, and I think that there is great hope for the future if parents lean in and work together.
Are you excited about some of the changes we're seeing from a national level? You know, the
Heck yeah.
idea that only women should compete in women's sports, right? Like normal things like that. Are
What a
you
concept.
right? Isn't it mind blowing?
It is.
All right, so
It
I have
is.
to ask you, when you were on Growing Pains, did you ever anticipate that you'd have to be discussing whether or not men could compete in women's sports?
No, of course not. I mean, nobody would have believed that that ever would be a possibility, right? Because they're saying we're progressing so much from the days of slavery, from the days of child sacrifice in the ancient world. But look what happens. We start sacrificing more and more babies at the altar of convenience through abortion, and we start perverting marriage and gender and all of these things, calling men that they're toxically masculine and saying that these women are actually men who can give birth. I mean, it's just insanity. So it's not progressive as they want to say. It's actually regressive. It's going backwards to the way things were when people acted like animals and men acted like children. Men should act like men, not animals, not women, and not children. And women should understand who they are and and love who God made them. So if we can get men and women, moms and dads and children back into the family, loving God, loving their country, and serving one another, then we can get back to America being good again, safe again, and great again.
And I think that is another important point that you're bringing up because I see so many young people that feel that they lack a sense of purpose, right?
Yeah.
We've basically taught people that stuff is what makes you happy, that
Yeah.
stuff is success, and that these material items actually mean something. But it turns out now that we have all this stuff, well, depression and anxiety are at the highest levels ever. And at the same time, we've seen the loss of faith. Now we're seeing people starting to wake up. We are seeing a return to the pews by some. And so do you think that with the right messaging, like Iggy and Mr. Kirk, like Brave Plus and
Yeah.
the shows that are going to be going on, that are already on, do you think that slowly people are waking up?
Yes, absolutely. I feel it everywhere I go. I speak in churches and public libraries and public and private schools, and I talk with politicians at the state level and at the national level. And I'm feeling the rumblings underneath my feet, and I'm seeing people waking up. Their eyes are opening, their ears are opening, they're listening to guys like you, and all of a sudden we've got alternate sources of information besides the legacy media, and we're beginning to think for ourselves, and people are standing up, speaking up, and I'm very excited. I think that this current cultural setback could be a divine setup for a spiritual and moral comeback led by moms and dads of faith and character.
Well, we certainly need it here in the United States, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
we sure do.
Everyone should check out the book Born to be Brave, How to Be a Part of America's Spiritual Comeback. They should check out Brave Plus's series, Iggy and Mr. Kirk. I'm going to have links up at the PAS Report website, pasreport.com. Kirk, thank you for joining me. Enjoy the conversation.
Hey, Nick, it's great to take a little journey through the past with you, talking about growing pains and everything else. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at pasreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at P.A.S. Report.